Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the resumption of our weekly live streams from Boulder, Colorado. It's been 2 months since we've been in touch, and honestly, I've missed being able to talk to you and practice with you. There's a very unique kind of energetic feel that is present here when all of us are together and all over the world and digging deeply into our experience, exploring what comes up and talking about it. So it's a wintry day here in Boulder, and coming down from a mountain hike at sunset, the almost full moon was riding high in the sky and shedding her light over everything, beautiful, huge, luminous. And the peace I felt descending on all the world at that moment, I feel here. So we have a few months now of being able to work together. And what I would like to do is explore the teachings of love, compassion, loving kindness, the teachings of the heart, and do that from now until really we have to leave for the UK later this spring for a teaching there. So I think to begin with, let's just connect with our practice. Let's do 1 or 2 sets of lower belly breathing just to come into our bodies and be here. And then I want to begin to offer the first in a sequence of these awakening heart practices, Bodhichitta practices, that we're going to be, hopefully by the end of the spring, we'll have a pretty full understanding and experience of the possibilities of what we call the way in which the Soma loves, which is very, very different from the way in which our ego loves. Okay, so for those of you who are new to this practice, the 12-fold lower belly breathing, going to take a medium to full in-breath into the lower belly, and then we're going to empty out very, very fully and clear our system of all the mental pollution and the discursive thinking and the all the tangles of our ego mind. So to begin with, we're just simply going to pick a spot midway between the perineum and the navel. So just do that right now. In the beginning, you have to visualize it. You have to imagine where it might be, and then just begin to bring your attention there and begin to breathe into that spot, just very gently. As you breathe, let your whole body relax. And let everything in you descend into your lower belly, into the point where you're breathing, and dissolve into it. You can dissolve on the in-breath, and you can dissolve on the out-breath into that point. And then we're going to continue to keep our attention right there, but we're going to be breathing a medium to full in-breath, and then we're going to squeeze our lower belly down and breathe out, breathe out, breathe out, breathe out, pulling the front of the lower belly back towards the sacrum, back towards the spine, and having the feeling of emptying out every last cubic millimeter of breath that's in your lower belly. Okay, so let's begin. We're going to do 12 of these breaths, medium to full in-breath and very full exhale. So please begin. As you move through the 12, you can apply a little bit more exertion on the exhale as your belly warms up. And if you get done before me, just keep going for a little while. And then just relax and let your body settle into itself. And move your awareness to the back of your body. So it's lying along your spinal line, your back line. If you feel a little bit of agitation, then move your awareness back a little further. Even it can go behind your body if you need to. And we keep taking this step backward until we contact a space that is really empty and open and free. And then just rest in that. And rest means luxuriate in it, relax into it, release into it. Abandon yourself into it and let go. So this is called touching absolute bodhicitta, meaning that when we do bodhicitta practice, translated as the awakening heart practice, we begin with the quantum emptiness of our basic mind, the immeasurable expanse of our basic nature. And we let ourselves dissolve into it. To enhance this, we could say, groundless ground of love, we could use the pallet. So let's begin to breathe in through our nostrils. And as you breathe in, notice the cool feeling at the back of your palate of the breath. Be with that coolness. It's a very cool, open space at the back of the palate. It's bright. It's fresh. And then abruptly we're going to open behind it, as if we're opening a door behind. So just do that. Open your awareness behind and let it extend backward behind your neck, out into the space behind you. So the front end of that vast space is this cool, bright space where the breath is touching the palate. And then it goes back from there to infinity. Just open and let go and feel that. Notice that space is nowhere, and it's everywhere. It has a quality of no center and no fringe. And when you let go into it, for a moment you're lost. There's only the space, there's no you. Just notice that. So to help us with this, I'm going to count to 3, and while I'm counting, be with the fresh, cool front end of this space at the back of the palate, bright, like a spring morning, fresh. 1, 2, 3, and then I'll say go, and when I say go, abruptly open backward. And at that instant of my saying go, see what the space behind you is like. And let yourself get lost in it for a moment. 1, 2, 3, go. This fundamental space of our basic nature is not a vacuity. It isn't a nada, a nothing. It's a space that is, if you look, alive, brewing, bubbling, fermenting. It's absolutely empty, but there's an energetic quality of presence and aliveness and dynamism in it, in that very emptiness. And the more empty it is, the more dynamic it feels and the more potentiality it has. So, having touched the groundless ground of, we could call it the ultimate heart, the absolute heart, which is emptiness itself. Now we're going to come to our heart center, right in the center of our chest. And we're going to begin to make contact with it and take step number 2 in these unfolding practices of bodhicitta. Step number 2 is just to begin to feel your heart. So let's put our attention there and see exactly how the heart is presenting itself at this moment. What kind of sensation is there? Does it feel sore? Does it feel constricted? Does it feel like it's imprisoned and unfree? Is there within it a longing to open? Is there a feeling of fragility and fear and vulnerability that causes us to shrink back? Just check it out. And continue to bring the breath into the heart center. As we do this, the sensations in the heart may change. And if they do, just be with that. See how it feels, see how it is. When we do this, step number 2 practice of beginning to feel the heart, it's essential that we do it completely without any judgment or agenda. Any sense of preconception whatsoever. The practice here is simply to see and to feel and to sense what's happening with the heart in this moment. In this case, the object of mindfulness is the heart center and the region of our chest around it. And we're just breathing into it and we're staying with it. So this is the practice that I would like to give you as homework. Begin with the 12-fold lower belly breathing, and you could do it 2 or 3 times. In programs, I must always do it 3 times with people, 2 times lying down and then 1 sitting up. And then extend that practice to feel the back line of your body, and keep stepping back until you encounter the basic space that is empty and uncluttered, immaculate and free. And rest there, fall into it, dissolve into it, luxuriate. And then when you feel ready, you can do the practice of the pallet, breathing into the pallet the way we did, feeling the coolness, connecting with the fresh, open, spring-like space, and then abruptly opening backward to infinity. And then, maybe spending 15 or 20 minutes on that practice, begin to breathe into your heart as we just did, and begin to see, feel, and sense how it is with your heart, what's going on. And it might be interesting for you to keep a journal, in the sense of writing down just the qualities, not what you think about what's going on, but simply describing in the matter of pure phenomenology exactly the non-conceptual experience that is happening for you in your heart. Further, I would suggest that you do this whenever you have a chance during this coming week. You can do it at the breakfast table. You can do it if you wake up at night. You can do it when you're sitting on the toilet. You can do it whenever, sitting on the bus, in addition to what you do on your cushion. The more time and attention we can give to our heart in these practices, the more the heart begins to awaken and begins to take its own direction. And that's what we're looking for. Very good. Well, just a few words about the sort of view of love in this lineage. We, in the practice of somatic meditation, we're always looking to touch into the natural wakefulness of the body and the way in which the body itself is already an arena of our basic nature, of our unconditional openness, of the space of the Dharmakaya. That particular experience is already going on in our body, and it's available. The same thing, interestingly, appears when we talk about compassion, that the body itself, the very nature of the space of our basic nature is love. It's receiving the other, it's making room for the other, it's learning how to open oneself to the experience of the other, and in that way know the other as we know ourselves, and receive the other as we would like to be received. We'll talk a lot more about that basic practice, but the important point is it's already inherently in our body. And so the Bodhichitta practice is not something where we have to manufacture a kind of care and concern and loving kindness for other people that does not currently exist in us. Rather, it's a matter of taking the armor and the coverings off our heart and gradually giving ourselves permission to feel what we already feel, and to be willing to have the daring and the bravery and the courage to act on what we already feel and what we already know about other people. So as usual, we are taking the Vajrayana view of the sacredness of the human person and the sacredness of all human persons. And we are simply uncovering that fact in our own lives, in our own awareness, in our own hearts. Then the practice of love is the only possible way we could be to other people. In the Dzogchen tradition, the practice of love is something that is absolutely and totally effortlessness. If our loving of other people requires any effort whatsoever, then we're not doing it quite right. However, we have to develop our own mechanism, our own tool, which is our human body, so that that effortless outflow of love can be released into the universe. So I'm looking forward to this spring and doing this work with you. And one thing I want to mention, this is going to be an awakening heart spring in many respects. On Valentine's Day here in Boulder, Caroline and I are going to offer a weekend at Naropa on the principle of the consort, the intimate relationship as a crucible of spiritual awakening. And this is very, very important for the Bodhichitta teachings, because in the Vajrayana, all our journey is coming into the relationality and the connection and the communion that once again inherently exists in us with everything that is. Within this vast project of growing into that awareness and that love, the intimate partner can play a very unique role, especially in the modern world. So that's Valentine's Day. And then 2 weeks later, beginning of March, for those of you who are living in the Bay Area, I'm going to be talking about Bodhichitta once again in relationship to trauma. And I'm doing 3 presentations for the conference at the California Institute of Integral Studies, basically talking about the tantric approach to trauma and giving various folks methods, ways of looking at trauma from the Vajrayana point of view to augment what the work that they're already doing. And then about 2/3 of the way through March, in Crestone, Caroline and I are going to be teaching a program called The Body Loves, which is a 9-day residential program at the Blazing Mountain Retreat Center on the awakening heart. And then, as if this weren't enough, a few weeks later I'm going to be hopefully recording a program on the awakening heart of all the bodhicitta practices we've been working with over the last 5 or 6 years. That sounds true. So, in a sense, the live streams are going to be an opportunity for me to talk to you about this body of teaching and kind of give you what the thread is going to look like and all these things that we're going to be doing. Okay, so I'd like to invite Elizabeth to come over, and I haven't seen Elizabeth in 2 months. Come join me, Elizabeth. Yeah, it's been weird. We saw each other every single week for like a long time, and then all of a sudden, nothing, nada.
I really missed it.
Yeah, I have too. Yeah.
I'm really excited that you're doing the Bodhichitta recordings.
Are you?
A lot with my patients, I can see that work is so needed, and I want to have something I can just hand to them, a full journey they can make. It's really powerful.
As you know, I've been trying to do this for several years. We actually recorded a whole entire program like 3 years ago. It sounds true, but it wasn't. At the end of the program, we killed ourselves for like a week. And at the end of the program, it was like, nope, it's not there. And we tried a couple more times. So I really hope this time it happens. I'm praying for it. Pray for me.
Okay. There's one question I think that ties in well with our practice tonight.
Yeah.
Sat Nam in Germany. In working with the yin breathing, the heart center, and the central channel, I experience these different pathways of the body as gates or experiential opening spaces, in the end guiding me to the same quality, like the one without a second, open, bright space, all-pervading. The heart space feels warm and loving and so on, while others have different flavors, different colors. Can you say something about the relationship of these different somatic gateways? Are they different in different yanas, or do they have different roles for our journey?
Well, there are, truthfully, an infinite number of gateways in our body. Literally, every cell is a potential gateway into the infinitude of being. However, in our lineage, we select, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 gateways. There's the perineum, there's the sexual center, which corresponds in men to the area of the prostate, to women the cervix. There is the lower dantian, so that's number 3, which we've worked with here in yin breathing. There's the navel. There's the solar plexus. There's the heart center. There's the throat center, the pallet, the middle of the head, the third eye, the interior of the head, and the top of the head. I mean, these are all, these are ones we use, but other traditions might use other ones. And, the questioner is right. Each of these is a pathway into the immeasurable expanse of our basic nature. However, they have different work to do in different places in our body. For example, in the heart center, the work or the activity of that space, the manifestation of that space is love. In the lower belly, in the yin, it's to tap us into the most primordial access to the ground of reality. We talked about when we breathe into the lower belly, we're breathing into the microcosmic dimension of the earth. And we're going to the point of infinity of the earth in the lower belly. We can do that within the body itself. And in Taoism it's called the Hun Tun, which is the place of chaos where space is erupting in energy. So each of the space is always the same space when you go to the full depth, but the way it manifests itself in the different centers differs in the qualities, and those qualities have activity to do. There's loving, there's singing, there's joy at the throat center. There is the connecting with the primordial source in the lower belly, and so on. And that defines the kind of range of human creativity. We as humans are able to express that space in different ways, and the different centers in our body provide the source of that creativity.
In the same vein, I won't search for the person's name, but they were talking about how the practice of skull breathing, and how they were really enjoying it and doing it a lot, but that he had noticed that you hadn't been teaching it in some time. And his guess was that because we're so caught in our heads in our culture, and that perhaps it's not as helpful to do a lot of skull practice. And he was wondering what you thought about that.
Well, truthfully, skull breathing, where is that found?
It's
is that
in your breathing body, I think. I have it on the Meditating with the Body discs.
Yeah, it's probably in volume 2, isn't it, of your breathing body? Is that where it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jonathan says yes. That's one of the all-time great practices as far as I'm concerned. And sometimes I just go back to it just out of sheer delight. I can't help myself. Basically, when I teach, and this, it's interesting that Trungpa Rinpoche was very much like this, and that's probably why I do it this way, because this is what I saw in him. He would teach a cycle of teachings, and then he would move on. And he would teach another cycle of teachings and move on. And it didn't mean that the teachings that he had taught 3 or 4 years ago were out of date at all. But that wasn't what he was doing. He was developing, and all of us went with him. We went wherever he wanted to go, we went, and we were with him, and we saw these teachings unfolding. One example would be the Tibetan Nundro. He taught about the Nundro in 74, 75, 76, more or less. And he taught prostrations in great depth. He taught about the Vajrasattva mantra. Those of you who know the Nundro. He taught about mandala practice, and he taught about Guru Yoga. And he gave very complete teachings, on those practices, but then he never taught them again for the rest of his life. He moved on. And then he began to teach Vajrayogini practice. And he did that for a number of years, and again left a legacy. It was very complete, but then he moved on. So I do it that way too. And just because I'm not teaching skull breathing, it doesn't mean that it isn't an unbelievably powerful practice and that I myself don't do it on a regular basis. It just means, I mean, if I teach everything that I teach all the time, it's going to be totally confusing. So right now we're working on Bodhichitta.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to try to round that out, that body of teaching, and then who knows what's next around here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have a question
Sure.
about bodhicitta practice.
Yeah.
In my own life, and I did a retreat, and in my own practice, a lot coming up with working with painful memories, shame, moments I regret. Just those moments bubble up throughout my day, but also in my practice. And in general, I've been working with lots of different tools, but the practice of holding it in awareness and just letting it be there, that pain or that energetic knot that comes up.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my MI, which is meditation instructor in Dharma Ocean. We each have our own mentor, which is an MI, and Tammy, and talking about the difference of holding that energy in the aware space that's very neutral, and that's how I was doing it, holding it in this really big open way, versus holding it with kindness.
Yeah.
And so I've been exploring that a lot, and I'm in the middle of my own journey with it, but just curious what you think about. There's a slight, subtle difference I'm noticing, how I relate to a painful moment that comes up in those two ways.
Yeah, there is a big difference, actually, an important difference. We need to, and this is something we'll talk about, during this particular sequence of live streams at a certain point, but we need to, number one, develop the basic, what we call the basic witness, which is this open, empty, really free space in our body, what we call the basic nature. We need to develop the ability to rest in that, and it really is truly a completely open state of mind. And the reason we need to do it is so that when things come up, as you say, we can hold them within that awareness. They can come up and they can be there, and we can be leaning back with a very big, open, spacious awareness, and they can come up and they can show themselves. And they do, as you know. The more you open, the more these, what I call prisoners of the lower realms of our body, of our past, make their appearance. But then what we have to do is we need to engage them. And I think an attitude of kindness is probably the first step. But then what we have to do is we have to actually enter into conversation with those parts of ourselves. And it's my experience and my belief that each of these, many, many, many buried parts of ourselves, which come from experiences that we've never really been able to assimilate because they're too painful. I mean, there are thousands for every person. That each of these has an image that goes with it. It might be a memory. It might be actually seeing ourselves at 2 years old. But there's some container for that feeling. There's something there that of an image that presents itself, and we can invite that. We can invite it by talking to it. If you have, if I have some kind of feeling of, sudden despair comes out of nowhere. And the more you practice, the more these kind of things happen, where your mind becomes open to the point where a lot of things happen that are not really under control. They're not under your control. So let's say I have a sudden moment of despair. I will ask that, who are you? Who are you, and what do you need? And can you tell me about yourself? And amazingly enough, the body will talk to you, and often in language, things come through. And when you begin to enter into this kind of intentional relationship with your unconscious, because that's really what we're talking about here, then the unconscious begins to or the body, which is the same thing, begins to offer you more information, and you may start having dreams about that very thing. So I think we need to really take this on as a very strongly intended work of compassion, that we are engaging these parts of ourselves, and we're inviting them, we're engaging them, and we are calling on them to tell their story, calling on them most of all to show us how they feel, how terrible they feel, how much pain they feel, how much suffering. And we need to be with them as a person, not just our awareness. As an adult, we need to be with this very tormented part of ourselves. And the feelings that come up can be agonizing, and they can be horrible, and they can be unbearable, because that's actually how those parts of ourselves feel right now. You might think, well, why should I go to the trouble of bringing up horrible things? But the thing is, they're in you. And as we know from modern psychology, those things that are in our unconscious and that are unresolved sufferings basically have a huge amount of impact on our conscious life without our knowing it. So there's much, much more to say about this, but we're doing the work of the world, when we engage the damaged and the tormented parts of ourselves. And we are not just addressing them in our own life, but we're addressing them everywhere. That's the view of the Vajrayana. You can be in retreat and working on some poor, tormented soul in the deepest dungeon of your body, your psyche, and you're working on that tormented soul as he or she appears in probably the lives of millions of people at the same time. So it's very, very interesting, very vast perspective we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. This might be an intellectual musing, but when I hear you say that, I think of the story of the Buddha's enlightenment, and they say he remembered all of his lives, and what comes to me is like he remembered all those moments that were stuck.
Yeah.
He freed up,
exactly,
perhaps spontaneously, all of that.
That's right.
Backlog.
That's right. And the other thing he saw was the sufferings of all beings everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And he felt them in his body as if he were feeling them. So there it is.
He had to touch the earth because it was...
Yeah, he touched the earth like, okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
This is Richard in Santa Monica. I've heard you give the instruction to locate tension and dissolve it into the lower belly with the in-breath, and at other times I've heard you say to let the tension flow into the earth with the out-breath. I'm wondering if there's a qualitative or practical distinction between the two in terms of relaxing tension, and if there are specific ways I should use the in-breath and the out-breath.
Well, keep in mind that the earth is the macrocosmic version of the lower belly. The lower belly and the earth have the same reality. One of them is found outside of us in the cosmos, which is the earth, and the other one is found in a microcosmic way in the lower belly, but they're the same reality. Generally speaking, working with the earth is the way to release tension, especially in 10 points. But all the other practices, the dissolving tension into the lower belly in yin breathing, for example, is used as part of the yin breathing technique. It's a way to really bring all the potentially distracting energy that may be going on in our body that may pull us out of the lower belly, to bring all of that energy into the lower belly. But that's not really a technique. I mean, if you want to work with tension, do 10 points practice. If you're doing yin breathing, then you're going to have to work with tension, but you do it in this way. So it's a very specific application of the teaching on releasing tension. Another one is, we will follow breath at the tip of the nose, and if you've done your breathing body, you know that part of that is we're actually dissolving tension into the breath at the tip of the nose. And that is, again, it's a way of focusing and gathering and integrating our awareness into that one point. And so the point in the lower belly and the point here, that way of working with tension is really to enhance that particular practice. It's not really specifically to release tension. Yeah.
This is Lisa. I'm new to Dharma Ocean, but I've explored different forms of meditation over the years, none of which have helped me with this specific troubling issue, dealing with psychic or paranormal experiences that overwhelm me. I'm quite intuitive and I used to do it professionally. I stopped because sometimes I could not control it and it felt like it was harming me. As an example, I was walking the other day and suddenly felt weak and like someone was dying. It felt very much like my mother's best friend, and sure enough, she died about 12 hours earlier. In the New Age world, this kind of experience is sought by many. However, I've had these experiences for years and they feel like a burden. How does Dharma Ocean explain such phenomena, and how do they suggest dealing with it?
Well, frankly, with all due respect, it's not a big deal. The more your mind opens through practice, the more vast and inclusive your experience of reality. And there are some people, as in this case, Lisa is her name. You have that gift just spontaneously. It's not something it sounds like it's not something you really developed. And there are people, who have that capacity, but sooner or later everybody develops it, when you do these practices. The important point is with those kinds of experiences, and also with all kinds of other odd, unusual, surprising experiences that we have on the path of a spiritual nature or a psychic nature, interpersonal nature, whatever it may be. The really important thing is not to invest in any of them at all. Just leave them alone. Let them come and let them go. The only way you can have difficulty is if you lose yourself in the experience. Basically, the instruction is stay home and stay in your body. And, if you begin to feel in any way, like walking in the park and having this thing happen, you sit down and you just come back and you stay home and you wait to see what it means. And it sounds like that's what she did. What sometimes happens with people when they either have these kinds of things happen spontaneously or they develop them, is then they begin to use them as part of their ego structure, and then you get into big trouble. You have people who try to capitalize on paranormal experiences and use them to enhance their sense of self or their social reputation or their financial situation. The experiences that happen in our life are not meant to be exploited, and as long as you remember that and let them come and let them go without any particular reactivity or investment, there won't be any problem. Yeah.
Thanks. This was sent in before the holidays, but I feel like it might be helpful for people post-holiday. Jamie, for many years of my adult life, for reasons I don't consciously understand, I have a very difficult time during the holidays, feeling sad and depressed, and I just want them to be over. Even now I'm starting to feel a dread months before. I don't enjoy participating in the current culture around the holidays, and finding an easy way to be around family is difficult also. I would really like to find some ease around this. I've tried to stay grounded by remembering parts of my sitting practice and body work, but seem to get triggered so easily. I wonder what you might say about this.
Yeah, this is, I think very, very common, as we all know. I was reading somewhere, somebody was saying that the most dreaded times of year are Thanksgiving and Christmas. Everybody dreads them, but everybody feels pressured to come together in certain ways and be together in certain ways, and that even increases the dread. And nobody really knows what to do about it. So our solution is we have Datun in the winter, that runs over Christmas, and it's an approach. In other words, what I'm suggesting is you could do something different. You could really listen to your body and listen to your psyche and see what's really wanted. See what your basic state of being wants to do with the challenges of the holidays. And it might be to be with your family in a certain way. It might be to not be with your family. It might be to go on retreat. It could be anything, but if if we are willing to consult our body, and we have this teaching that I think many of you know about called somatic descent, where we consult the body and see what the body's view is, its impartial view of a challenge such as this, guaranteed we're going to be shown the way through. And it may be very different from any possibility we've imagined, but I think we have to do that, really. I don't think we can think our way out of it or come up with some kind of one-size-fits-all. Each situation is going to be different, and we have to approach it, and we have to realize every situation holds an answer for us. There is a way through every single situation that arises in our life, but the thing is we have to find it. And within the Vajrayana traditions, the body becomes the reference point. The three bodies of the Buddha is where you go and you seek the answer. Once you have done that, learned how to do it, learned how to practice somatic descent, and you do it a few times, and you see what happens, you begin to have some real confidence in yourself that it's not just a matter of resting in the natural state and feeling that freedom, but you can actually handle your life on a day-to-day basis. It's very, very interesting. Trungpa Rinpoche talked about this just a very little bit, but he said if you know how to be with your experience in the right way, then provides guidelines for your life. And that is, for many modern practitioners, that's a missing piece. We can rest in the nature, but we actually don't know how to be with our experience in a non-conceptual way, which means in the body.
Let's see. Tara, in Pennsylvania, there are times when I feel that the teachings, the view, and my inspiration are nearly inaccessible to me, like through a foggy window. At these times I feel estranged and alone, and my path becomes obscure. My reaction is to question everything that seems so clear to me and to doubt even the validity, to put it politely, of this work. I tend to turn away from my practice as well. Any thoughts?
Well, who says the experience of clarity is more valid than the experience of looking through a foggy window? I mean, from a certain point of view, looking through a foggy window is a very clear experience. It's very definite. And who says that, to use an analogy, who says that having the lights turned on bright is better than having the lights turned off and sitting in darkness? What I'm getting at is that in our practice, we develop ideas about what is a good practice and what's a bad practice. We have a certain understanding. We have a lot of preconceptions, which may not be really that far off, but they are preconceptions. And the problem with that is that then when things happen that are different from what we think or what we expect or what we think we've heard, then all of a sudden we can't function anymore, and we distrust everything. The whole point, I think, of learning to live our life from our body and view our life from our body and experience our life in a way that is direct and naked and straightforward and non-conceptual is that from the body's viewpoint, there is no superior and inferior. There's just what is. And when we are able to reside within the body, then whatever preconceptions we have about how our practice should look or what a good experience is really are not relevant anymore. So my suggestion would be just it needs to be more body work, needs to be learning to how to view the body as the source of information, the only reliable source of information. The thinking mind that judges and evaluates and says this is good and this is bad isn't really reliable. One of the things we're going to do this spring is be exploring how the heart knows. The heart knows in a way that it's a very refined aspect of the body, and it knows with a precision and a depth and a clarity and an objectivity in a way that the thinking mind has no access to. So I would just suggest that don't necessarily invest so much in what you think and just do the practice.
Lori in Virginia. When doing the practice of pure awareness, I always initially feel apprehension as I bring my breath and attention into my lower belly. At first, I thought this was about early sexual trauma, but now I believe it's fear that there's an incomprehensible strength and brilliance there, a Pandora's box that once fully opened will ... I'm not sure what will happen, but it is at once intimidating and inviting. Can you speak to this?
Well, I mean, let's face it, the ego is not into the unknown. The ego does not like the unknown. The ego likes that which can be known, quantified, evaluated, pigeonholed, labeled, and thought about. And I entirely understand and share that feeling of, that first breath in the lower belly. There is a subtle dread, there is a subtle apprehension, and that's the ego's defense mechanism. It's basically saying, don't go there, this is not a good thing. And from the ego standpoint, it's not a good thing. But of course, once we get there, then it's a very good thing. So it's just human. I think this is very insightful. This is not sexual trauma. It's not some kind of specific problem. It's the human thing, that she's running into, that I run into, and we all run into.
Mm-hmm. I felt it tonight in the upper pallet area. I'd never felt that before. Just this, my heart started to race.
Interesting. That's great. Yeah,
so
that's
new.
really great. Yeah, that's how it is. Yeah. Might as well face it, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brendan, you say in a previous video that running energy is not healthy and one should stop it. What exactly is running energy and why is it bad for you? I focus my attention on the solar plexus, and this activates a flow of subtle electrical energy up and down through my spine, from the top of my head through my body. It feels beneficial. Is this what you mean by running energy? Because I've been doing this a lot for years. Should I stop? I've learned this meditation from the Twin Hearts meditation.
Is this question a setup? There, as the questioner knows, and I think as probably all of our viewers know, there are many, many, many spiritual and quasi-spiritual teachings, running around North America especially, that involve manipulating energy and doing it so we can feel good, we can feel better. And it's risky. It's risky unless you stay at a very superficial level. And you can do it at a very superficial level. And then it's probably not risky. But what we are talking about in our lineage is we're talking about contacting the source out of which the primordial life force flows. And we contact it in the earth, and we contact it in the lower belly. And then we receive that primordial life force into our system. And if we, as egocentric beings, begin to try to once again exploit that energy and use it for ego ends such as comfort, security, social approbation, feeling of self-esteem, to solve problems we have. The ego's doing it. If we do that, we can get into a lot of trouble. And this is not something that I'm, I'm not the originator of this concept. Many teachers who work in the way we do will say the same thing. In my university teaching, I've run across many people, young people, who have somehow fallen into some kind of Kundalini tradition. They have not been well trained, and they're running energy through their system, and what they're running it through for is their ego. It's not for spiritual purposes. It's not for purposes of dismantling the ego and opening one's state of being and learning how to love other people. It's for their own personal benefit. And a lot of these folks are not in very good shape. They have what the Tibetans called a severe lung disease, which means wind disease. Their energy is just running rampant. And the reason it's a problem is because, for example, in the Vajrayana tradition I was trained in, you spend many years developing the neurological infrastructure and capacity to be able to receive the primordial life force in a way that can be creative and opening and beneficial to other people. When you enter in as an egocentric being with your own personal ambition, and you begin manipulating that energy, in most cases your system can't handle it, and you, in a way, you burn out your wiring. And again, you just, if you're a teacher, you meet a lot of people to whom that's happened. And the way back is, there is a way back, but it takes a lot of time, and it's very hard. Often there are, psychological disturbances and disruptions, and kind of parts of our psyche running around that we can't manage. So I'm always going to be, number one, wanting you to start with the primordial energy and the primordial openness and the egolessness of the groundless ground. And I'm wanting you to train yourselves well so that the outcome is going to be healthy and wholesome and not something that is going to be harmful for you.
I know another teacher who sees thousands of people, and I've heard him speak about that's the injury he sees most often.
Most often, yeah, it's true. Yeah. Who is that, by the way?
Ajashanti.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he talks about it a lot.
Almost does too.
Mm-hmm. Benjamin in Sarajevo, why do I keep repeating the same self-centered scenarios even though I know that they do not correspond to reality?
Well, the flywheel has to slow down. You have to give yourself a break. We've been engaged in these patterns, and we have been running in these neurological ruts, for a whole lifetime. And what's happening every time we experience them is they're becoming a little less powerful, and over time they run out of gas. They really do. You have to be aware of them. They're not going to run out of gas unless you're aware, but this person is. And I just say be patient. They're going to run out. Because you have cut the taproot. Once you make room for awareness of your habitual patterns, horrible, disgusting, repetitive, boring, tedious as they may be, once you cut that taproot, it's just a matter of time until they run out of gas. So maybe one more?
Mm-hmm. Patricia in Grass Valley, can you explain the difference between Zazen and Shikantaza? And I imagine she means posture of pure awareness.
Zazen, and we're talking now about the practice of Zazen, including the posture, as taught by people. Americans,
she didn't give me any
teachers.
background. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Zazen and the Shikantaza that we do in our lineage, in many ways, are very, very similar. And the posture is the same, virtually the same. We add a few additions. And the practice is the same, the instructor is the same as be with the body, be in the body, just be. Be with the posture, just be it. But there are some very, very important differences, and I won't go into detail because it would take too long, but one difference is there's much more emphasis in the way we teach it on developing the internal space of the body as the key point in the posture. And we emphasize that the entire posture of Vajrayana Shikantaza emerges out of the space of the central channel and organizes itself around that space. This may seem slightly unclear in the way I'm talking about it. If you're interested in really following this in detail, we have a CD program that came out in the fall. What's it called?
The posture of pure awareness?
Practice of pure awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah, the practice of pure awareness sounds true, and you'll see very well. And in that program, I actually talk in much more detail about the differences. So there is much more of an emphasis on the inner, what we call the inner posture, or the inner space of the body. And you go through two steps the way we teach it. One is you learn the outer posture, the straight back, head lifting, chin down, ears back, and the other important points. But then the second and more important one is begin to develop a sense of what kind of space that opens up in your body. And you shift your investment from the outer points of posture to the inner space of the central channel, and you rearrange your outer posture in accordance with the what opens up that space the most, fully and completely. And there are other differences too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll add to that. Someone asked about their gaze, that looking down in that way was hurting, like creating a lot of back pain, and he was asking if it's okay to look at like wall gazing, just to look straight forward, if you thought that that was problematic.
Well,
It's part of
the
that.
teaching of the ears coming back over the shoulders keeps your head from dropping down. That's the point of that particular part of the posture. And when you do, you're not really wanting to look at something. You're wanting to have a very, very soft gaze, almost as if your attention is in the back of your eyeball. So that should take care of it, because then the head can be in the position it wants to, and you're not looking one place or another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank
It's
you.
lovely
Wonderful
to
to
see
be with you
and
again.
to be going again. And I want to thank everybody for being with us tonight. And just to review, please do the practice that I outlined for your homework, and try to spend half an hour, 40 minutes every day doing it. And then next week we'll be able to take another step. So I didn't start with a bow, but I'd like to end with one, and we'll do the Dharma Ocean bow, since we're doing the Bodhichitta practice this spring. Thanks, everybody.